Why are we thinking the deputy president is the problem? They thought Rigathi Gachagua was the problem. They impeached him. Problems continued to persist in this government. Now they are saying it's Kindiki. Remove him. Then after 1 year, you realize Kindiki was never the problem. Put another one, remove him. You know, you have a school here, if I can give you a simple example. A school that has chosen to change the cook. They have changed the driver. They have changed the watchman. They have changed all teachers. Mpaka wana substitute mwalimu wa chemistry anapelekwa Kiswahili, wa biology anapelekwa physics, but nobody wants to talk about the school principal. The school has a problem because the principal is the problem. So even if you keep changing the cabinet, you keep changing the kitchen, you keep changing the driver, you change the cook, the matron in the kitchen, the problem is the principal of the school. He's running the school badly. And he keeps now blaming every other person, including the former principal of that school. He's even blaming the former deputy principal of that school. He's blaming everybody he's even blaming the BOG. William Ruto is the problem. Face it. Now, if you come here and take this guy called Oparanya and make him the deputy president, he's the deputy president of who? William Ruto. And William Ruto is the problem. So I'm telling people, even if William Ruto takes TD Jakes and makes him his running mate, ama afufue Martin Luther King, ama achukue any person, including Barack Obama, and make Barack Obama the running mate, Kenyans will always remember their problem is William Ruto. But every opinion poll has told you the truth. Even your own NIS has told you don't have numbers. Why are you hating Kindiki for not having numbers? Why are you thinking Oparanya will bring you numbers? There comes a time in leadership when you ask yourself, it is true Kenyans don't want me. What's the honorable thing to do? Don't offer yourself for leadership. Stop looking for fixes and start saying, Nikieka huyu hapa. If Kenyans don't want you, they don't want you, period. So start saying, Fred Ndimuli hana kura aende. Mimi mwenyewe namfukuza, niko na kura. William Ruto had the whole mountain under him. They voted for him. I was in Azimio with Mheshimiwa Sabina Chege here, who later moved. I was in Jubilee. We were pushing Baba. So now he has the mountain that voted for him is not with him. The bulk of Western is not with him. He has looked around the country and he knows that the country is not with him. Instead of him accepting that Kenyans don't want him to be president, he's now looking for other people to bring him votes. Let me tell President William Ruto something that he needs to know for free. Even if he gets Abraham or Moses or Elijah or even King David wafufuliwe to become his running mates, Kenyans will always remember that he's the principal. He's the one who is running as president and they don't want him. So it doesn't matter who he brings as deputy. He needs to sit down and ask himself, must I be president?
Okay.
Yeah.
Personally, I will not say that there is any, because again, when you're talking about the Standard is not a newspaper that is supporting government. So if the Standard is the source of information, first of all, I'll say I will look at it.
That was yesterday. Today it's on all other papers. It's on the Daily
all
Nation,
the papers, but okay, I've read the papers, and they have said that the deputy president is actually under siege because of three things. One is because of Gachagua, who is talking to people and telling people in Meru that the deputy president Kindiki is under siege. So how do you believe Gachagua in this matter? He's a bitter person. He's the one who was ousted as a worst deputy president. And so definitely you will want to see Gachagua, Kindiki going through the same thing. So anything that Gachagua says about government is wrong. So we will not want to believe that front. The second front is about ODM. That ODM is now introducing a new deputy president. That is not by any law. And that ODM is not Ruto. Ruto is the one that is supposed to name his deputy president. So when there's political jostling that we've just seen Jeanette introducing Oparanya as the new deputy president, that is politics. That is not law. And that does not signal anything about Kindiki going through trouble. And the third one is what we've said. Unfortunately, yesterday, we've actually seen Kindiki chairing a very powerful cabinet meeting. I remember when Gachagua was being impeached, we were called into Karen, personally, members of parliament from the NADI, the Northeastern. We were actually asked to go and sit there because he chaired the NADI. Only 7 members of parliament appeared out of all. It basically means people started running and there was no cabinet secretary. there was a great signal that Gachagua was going to be impeached. But yesterday, we saw Kindiki chairing a very powerful meeting. And this was a meeting that was given to him to chair by the president.
What would be the reason for transferring any of his roles?
Let me, I'm actually coming there. I'm coming there. Out of what has happened in Olkalau, I think the deputy president is supposed to sharpen his machinery, political machinery. So if he's given roles as to do things that other people in government will do, it basically means then he's not going to perform his political duties very well. I think what the president is doing is strategic, is allowing Gachagua to free off some of the responsibilities, the official responsibilities, so that it can be able to now focus on politics, to be able to deliver some votes from Mount Kenya.
Right.
So I don't think it is Gachagua suffering. No, it is Kindiki. Just the opposition trying to see...
We're talking about Professor Kindiki.
No, sorry, thank you. I don't think it is Professor Kindiki suffering. In any case, he is the one who dismissed it. He said it, and he said there was nothing wrong. When Gachagua was being impeached, he cried and he said, oh, they want to remove me. So these are two different scenarios, and we can already see Kindiki still formally informing Kenyans that those are cheap propaganda.
Yet he's already in a fighting mood, Madam Chege.
This position of deputy president, even when the former president Uhuru Kenyatta was there, at some point we saw like all the powers that were given to now the current president William Ruto were given to the interior then cabinet minister, who was Fred Matiang'i, who is also trying to also get to the presidency. So these are not new things. I don't know why we like to sensationalize, to make things look like they are just new, they're happening. Professor is under siege. He's not. He's just doing his job. We are getting into a very interesting time when everybody is fighting for their space. And I think the big question is, and I have my friend here, he's an aspirant trying to look for a position of power. So he's also looking for power. At the end of the day, when you say William Ruto has failed, I would rather say focus on what you're looking for as a person. Because William Ruto, yes, he's a principal, as you want to say. He has other people who work around with him. We have different communities in this country. And so when we talk about Kindiki comparing with Gachagua, this whole story that Gachagua was removed or impeached from his position is a stale story now. We are coming into the elections of 2027. As much as some of our people want to radicalize our community, and they also want to make Kenyans believe like we are coming to the end of the world, we are not. These are not new things happening. And I would want to say Professor Kithure Kindiki was not in Olkarau. We saw him in Bere actively. We saw them answering each other with Gachagua. But this time, no one can blame him for Olkarau because he was not there.
You've said that it is a season where everyone fights for the
for the space.
So you do agree that even the deputy president is in a fight for his political space?
He's not fighting. I'm saying every other community. That's why you saw the Luo community when they met, they presented Oparanya. And by the way, if I had them right, the ODM brigade, they said when they go to Mombasa, they are pushing for Joho. When they go to this other part of Kenya, they are pushing for different people. And it's just the way, the kama karata, people trying to position themselves for 2027. The big question is, how well are you prepared? How have you managed to, to bring people together? We have now the Sifunas coming up. And so we are going to have very interesting times ahead. I have been in this space for some time. And I was there 2022 when I supported Baba, and unfortunately we lost. And at the same time, I saw how my people from my community behaved towards the former president. Now today you see the same people trying to show like he was a savior. They have just woken up from a dream and discovered that we made a mistake. And I'm telling them, I would also want to say the same thing here, that I don't want to prophesy, but in 2-3 years' time, we might be in the same position we are in, trying to say we made a mistake.
Right.
We were misled. And you see, the same people whom they are following now are the same people at a time like this, last election, told them Uhuru was a very bad person.
Interesting times.
Today, they are giving us a different story.
But
they said
this.
They were lied to. So
picture this.
And I like painting the image of a house on fire. The whole house that you live in is on fire. And someone is telling you, you just focus on the bedroom you live in. your bedroom is not really on fire, or just put out the fire that is in your bedroom. You don't need the kitchen, you don't need the sitting room, you don't need even the bathroom. The only thing you need to worry about is your bedroom. A house is complete. There is no Dagoretti South without Kenya. There is no Dagoretti South if every other young person is being shot carelessly. If goons are moving the way they are moving in this country. If they are doing the things we saw them doing in Kisumu, wanafanya hivi panga kwa barabara, and then we see videos and photos of them, and then DCI says for some reason, those ones, they are not able to arrest them and they are not able to do something about them. So when I'm told not to focus on what is happening nationally and focus on Dagoretti South, I worry deeply about that kind of thinking, because there will be no Dagoretti South if there is no Kenya. So we have to address holistically everything that is happening in this country, because this country belongs to all of us. When I see somebody like, for example, Gladys Wanga, who has been moving around this country and saying that SHA is working, and then she finds herself before Senate, and she's being told, by the way, are you aware that SHA owes your county 350 million? They've not given your county. And she can't move anymore selling SHA because now she's worried about her own county not receiving 350 million, and she's selling it before Senate. So let us be very keenly aware that this country is complete, and everything that happens in this country happens to every other person within the country. Now, coming to the Deputy President seeing William Ruto choosing someone else as the running mate and not himself is not a worrying thing. This thing is about the country, and it's about what works and is what is right. But I want you to look at it also differently. Professor Kithure Kindiki, as she said rightfully, is not a foolish man. He's a wise person. He could also decide to bolt out before that time, because he's listening and he's following and he's going to see, look here, let me tell you, by December of this year, the number of MPs who are supporting government who will have bolted out and left government will be very high, including governors and senators and even civil servants who are just waiting for the right time around January to bolt out. And so let's not just think of Professor Kithure Kindiki sticking with William Ruto and not being appointed. Let's also think of the converse, where he wakes up and realizes this thing is not working. You remember Professor George Saitoti saying there come a time when the nation is more important than an individual. And you remember what happened around that time when it was actually them now, including Akina Kalonzo Musyoka, leaving Moi. It was not Moi dumping them. They left Moi and joined forces with Akina Raila Odinga and formed LDP. So the converse is also true, that you can wake up to a situation where William Ruto, instead of him finding himself having to deal with Professor Kindiki, Kindiki says, it's the time for the frog to jump out of the water, because you can't stay under these conditions. So it's going to be interesting times ahead. But let's wait for January.
And we've seen if the president does not feel comfortable to work with the deputy, then you find that all power, most of the powers actually are vested on the president. And so many people will actually go where the power is, and the deputy president will be left on the cold. And so I think what we need to do as a country is to try again to look at the relationship, not the roles, the relationship between the president and the deputy president.
How do we legislate on a relationship?
Yes, exactly. I don't know, today you were reading my mind. Yeah. When we were deputy governors and those issues came, we were taken to Naivasha. And one of the head of public service then came and told us something that I think is important. He said, it is not easy to legislate on relationships. And so it is important that when a deputy president is being picked, these are people that should be having very cordial relationship, first of all at personal level, before we actually come to the official. Because if they only met at the official level, basically we're going to see the issues that we are seeing in most of the deputy president. We saw this between Uhuru and Ruto, but during the second term. The first time there was a little bit of friction, but during the second term is very open. We have seen it between Ruto and Gachagua, but I think that was a making of Gachagua. If you actually look at everything, personally, I will blame 100% Gachagua, because when you start talking about dividing this country into shares, when this country, the constitution is very clear that Kenyans is one, that basically means he started creating issues for himself. For Deputy President now, Professor Kithure Kindiki, I don't think why we are trying to create an issue. We are talking about we are going to see things come in January, we are going to see this. This is something that himself yesterday said that is a matter that is not there. This is politics. And I said in my beginning statement that the last year to an election is like the last round of a lap when you're running, when now you have to jostle for a position because in front of you there's the mark and everybody tries to do everything possible to reach. And so we will see a lot of political things happening around the office of the Deputy President. What I will assure Kenyans today, and anybody listening to me, is that the position of the Deputy President, Professor Kithure Kindiki, stands as it is. There is no change, and what the professor from Meru said is as critical as it is. It is important that the president retain Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua for 2027 election for the purposes
Kithure
of Mount
Kindiki,
Kenya.
Professor.
There was a professor that spoke here.
Naituli. I think
yes.
it was referring to the Professor Kithure Kindiki.
There was a professor that spoke here and
Yes.
said it is important that the Deputy President Kithure Kindiki be retained.
Yes.
That professor said something that is very important.
Yes.
Because for the first time, we are seeing a Deputy President from Mount Kenya East. And for the first time, people in Mount Kenya East are realizing that Mount Kenya West don't really care. They don't really matter. They really think about them.
Okay.
They actually use them most of the time.
A deputy is a deputy. But we saw a very interesting scenario of 2013 where William Ruto had the URP party, and then Uhuru Kenyatta had his, then it was PNU, then went to TNA party. And they came in not really as a deputy president, but as a co-presidency. And I think that's where the Yangu Kumi came in, because he came with the basket from Rift Valley. And then Uhuru Kenyatta enjoyed the support from Mount Kenya. I hear now people want to divide that there's Mount Kenya East and West. We are all in Mount Kenya and we are all one. It's the same scenario when it comes to politics, and our people say there's Murang'a North and Murang'a South, but when they are voting, they again forget Murang'a North and South. So we are all in Mount Kenya. And so it would be unfair for anyone to say that Mount Kenya West have taken advantage of Mount Kenya East people, or East have taken advantage of West. To me, I don't even, I don't place myself whether I'm in East or West.
And we'll come to that conversation, because
exactly.
we've lined up for our conversation today.
My take would be, it is a political position. And what any presidential candidate will look at are the numbers and advantage of having such a person. My experience with
So the professor is right when he says that a presidential candidate can simply use running mate for the votes and then get rid of them immediately after the election.
I don't think so. It's not as easy, because we only saw the scenario of one person, and that's why I'm saying Kenya cannot, because I've had house on fire, all these things that we are being told. Kenya is not burning. Kenya is not burning because of one individual. We have only seen a scenario of one deputy president who have been removed. And I think we will need analysts to even analyze that persona of that person who was removed and the situation around why the person was removed. There are many stories that we might not even go through them today. Yes. And there are many also other stories that are also said elsewhere. But what I want to say is that the deputy president position is actually a deputy, an assistant. I had a little bit of experience with the former deputy president who was impeached, and now the experience with Kithure Kindiki. Kithure Kindiki actually comes in as a very good assistant. When the president is giving or meeting delegates, Kithure Kindiki comes in to explain the projects that the government has done. He comes in very handy.
Okay.
He's actually at one point amazed all of us when he was able to outline everything that the government has done without referring anywhere. Okay. You know, and I think he's the best deputy. I would love to. But when a deputy president becomes now a competitor or a co-president, then that's where we lose it. And that's why we saw at the position when William Ruto was a deputy, and then there was Uhuru Kenyatta, there was some disagreements here and there, because William Ruto felt like we had a deal.
Yes.
Na unaniruka sasa.
They had serious disagreements with William Ruto. Even during the first time, there was Aurora and Kimwarer and so many other bad, terrible things. In fact, during their first term, we used to watch news with a handkerchief. Juu ya machozi na calculator. Unafanya billions zinajaa kwa calculator. There was a lot of problems. But what did Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta did? He said, I'm a gentleman. We had an agreement with him. I don't agree with all the things that are happening, but let's continue. And they did 10 years. Go back to Mwai Kibaki. He only left Kijana Wamalwa because Kijana Wamalwa died. But when he took this good gentleman, Mudi Awori, they stuck with Mudi Awori for the longest. In the previous term, he was with Kalonzo Musyoka for 5 years. They had no problem. They worked very well. Let me tell you, you cannot run away from the principle. Moi, bad as he may have been, at some point stuck with Saitoti, actually, I was looking at it, between 1989 to 1997. That's a whole close to 10 years. Then he took a break. That time he stayed for 11 months without a DP. But again, you can see from 1989 to 2002, we had one vice president in this country, Professor George Saitoti, with President Moi. It tells you, Moi, difficult as people may have thought he was, had this thing of loyalty and respect, and he was ready to work with people. Kenyatta, in his 15-year rule, had 3 vice presidents. And so when you look at it, you realize that you cannot run away from the fact that what has happened with Rigathi Gachagua, and I don't blame him, by the way. Initially, when he was in government, I really used to fight him. I never agreed with many things. But now, I'm sitting and thinking, for a minute, I'm thinking, Rigathi Gachagua is doing to William Ruto what William Ruto was doing to Uhuru Kenyatta. And then William Ruto is saying, wait a minute, why is this deputy behaving this way? Because I think Rigathi Gachagua had been writing notes. He was copying what William Ruto was doing to Uhuru Kenyatta. And then he tried that on his own boss, and then it was not being acceptable. So I will keep telling people that you can have a deputy president like Mwai Kibaki did, and you can exist together peacefully if you yourself are willing to have people working with you. They are saying Professor Kithure Kindiki, she said, is a good assistant to the president. But I tend to disagree on some aspects because, let me ask you, when they are discussing in Parliament, and I saw those, and you saw it was all over the newspaper, an allocation of 8 million shillings for the deputy president to fly every day. Where is he flying to? Why are we allocating him 8 million shillings per day to fly in a country where people can't fix a meal? It is not me. It was discussed in Parliament. It was all over the newspaper. And they couldn't explain. What is this assisting when you come to programs when he's giving beans to people all over the country? There are better things we could allow a deputy president to do, but those are not some of them. Also, I want to be somebody's principal assistant. But I don't want to be your principal assistant in assisting you to run a country that has got goons all over the place. At mpaka saa hii, we are still doing investigations to know who was killing people in Olkalao, and those vehicles were being parked at the county commissioner's office. And the county commissioner comes and owns up and says, yes, the cars were being parked in my place. And those hooded men were coming to the county commissioner's place. But we are still doing investigations, and the deputy president is helping the president in an administration that is killing people like this. So what are you assisting him with? The idea of risasi ya mguu, the idea of killing young people, the idea of abductions? I must say, I had issues with Rigathi Gachagua when he was deputy, but I agreed with him on one thing. When our Gen Zs were being killed, they were being killed, he went to Mombasa and did a press conference. I said, on this one, no. On this one, I don't agree with my president. We can't have our young people being killed like this. And I was hoping Professor Kithure Kindiki, having been a professor of law, would have come and told the president, this is lawlessness. We can't sink to the level where goons will go to All Saints Cathedral and do the things they are doing. Okay. And then we come and tell Kenyans that up to now, nothing has been done. We can't sink to the level where I'm seeing an archbishop in Kisumu holding arrows that had been shot at people inside the church. And up to this particular moment, we are not seeing prosecutions. We are not seeing people in jail. Allow me to tell you that once your sister media stations, I don't want to mention here, did their exposés, and they even mentioned senior people within government who are still occupying public office to date, the president has been unable to interdict them. And allow me to tell you this. As we speak right now, this is a country where you wake up and they are telling you that Kithure Kindiki makes a good deputy president. And I agree. But ask yourself the question of this guy called C.S. Ruto. C.S. Ruto, by the way, from where I sit, I think he's the minister in charge of Mount Kenya Separation Affairs. Okay. Because I've never heard him say anything about his ministry. Everything that Ruto says has got to do with Mount Kenya